Hi there, Phil. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
I am well. Hello to everyone out there. My name is Stephen Laddick. I'm the director at LMSPulse, and I'm here with Phil Miller, who's the executive director of Open LMS. And today we wanted to have, well, I had a special announcement today that we weren't actually able to put in the announcement for this live broadcast right here. But I guess we should probably tell people why we're here.
Yeah, do you want to do that?
I guess so. I guess I'll do that. Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody, wait, they can see up there in the corner of the screen. No, I'm really excited to announce that LMSPulse has actually become a part of the Open LMS and the Learning Technologies Group team. This is super exciting. And actually, we announced it yesterday in our blog post and our emails that went out to everybody and everything like that. But we wanted to have a short conversation here to talk about what does this mean? Like, why did this happen? What does this all mean and everything? I got to say, like, earlier today, you posted on LinkedIn, Phil, that you feel like a kid in a candy store for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
And I responded with, I feel like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, right? Like I just opened up the golden ticket. And I mean that in the best way, right? Like not like, hey, here's the golden thing, but we've just become a part of.
You mean that in the way like the grandpa's going to jump out of bed and go with you? I'm trying to remember the whole story there.
But I don't have to eat cabbage soup anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
No.
Okay, so you're excited too. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, no, this is super exciting. But before we talk about why is it so exciting, let's talk about actually how it came to be. And I mean, really, the story is pretty simple. The story is I am a guy who's always talking with people out there. LMSPulse has been around,
that's
as you know,
your job. That's
for
your
11
job,
years.
right?
Yeah, we've been around for 11 years, and you and I had this conversation. And the conversation was pretty simple. We were talking about other stuff. And we just happened to start talking about, well, what does community look like? And what does the e-learning community look like? And the conversation around distance learning, online learning, ed tech, etc. And you told me that you wanted to build a more vibrant conversation around that.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the conversation gets segmented either by the platform that you use, or if you're a technologist, or if you're a teacher or a leader. And one of the things that I love about LMSPulse, and one of the reasons I'm so excited about it being here, and also your podcast, I will say I haven't watched all of them, but is the variety that comes into that, and how I think LMSPulse kind of spans platforms, and the eLearning Success Summit as well. It spans platforms, it spans job roles. It's just good information. And if you're what we call at Open LMS an ed tech nerd, which I think both of us are, like all of that stuff is interesting. I'm not a chief learning officer at a company, but I appreciate hearing what they have to say. I also don't write code, but I appreciate that there's a conversation happening about how to write better Moodle code, for example. So I think that's one of the reasons that I get so excited about it. And yeah, I mean, the other way to think about the other way as I think about the history is just, I think as we've gotten to know each other more, I mean, we knew each other before, I think it was last October when this first kind of came up, like, hey, should we be working together? And we couldn't really do it at the time. At the time we were actually looking at getting the eThink acquisition done. But is that as we've gotten to know each other, it just the passions seem to align as well. And the view on, listen, we of course are running a business at Open LMS and we want to grow that business. But that business can only be successful if our clients are successful with our products, and if the community that around ed tech and education technology is also growing and vibrant. And so we care really deeply about that, and I think you guys have cared really deeply about that, and have been good stewards of that. And so I think and that's what really struck me, is just, and that's what, you referenced my LinkedIn post. What I get excited about is getting groups of people together that have a lot of passion about the same or similar things. And when you do that, you tend to find people that are highly motivated and that just accomplish great things. And so that's what we're trying to do at Open LMS, and couldn't be more delighted to have you and Christian and all of the LMSPulse subscribers and all the people that have been attending and sponsoring LMSPulse and the eLearning Success Summit. Whether if you use our direct competitors, like, that's okay. We still love you and want you to be a part of our community. It's just, we want to have conversations about how to make this better for everybody, not just for our clients. So that alignment of passions, I think, felt really important to me as you and I continued the conversation from last year and into this year. It is surprising. It's been, I think we're coming up on a year from when you and I first had kind of this crazy conversation about what would it look like if LMSPulse and Open LMS came together. But anyway, I'm excited. I'm delighted to have you guys on board. It's what you're day 2 now?
Day 2. This is literally day 2.
Very good.
And one of the things I wanted to riff off of there was a big part of the conversation was how, I think one of the first questions you asked me was like, well, how do you continue to talk about all of the technologies and whatnot? And I think you've put it out there, or we've now put it out there as Open LMS, that look, we want to be a part of the open source community, a part of the e-learning community, and this is what ELearn Magazine is all about. This is what the forum is all about, etc. And that honestly just really turned me on. It's like, look, if we can really continue to have the conversation with everyone and not become sort of a commercial, then we really have something to grow, right? We really have something to go on. I still get fascinated with the conversations. This happened just last weekend, where one of my friends, we're sitting there talking, and he's like, look, how many times a week do you do a Google search, to learn something about coding, about something? And I was like, hey, that's e-learning, right? Right. And one part of the spectrum. But then there's this other part of the spectrum where my kids are going back to school this next week, but there's all these talk about hybrid and this and that. That's also e-learning. And there's everything in between, right? There's the apps on your phone. There's the learning platform either in your company or your school, or you go to Coursera, or you go to Thinkific or whatever. That's all e-learning. And what we're really talking about, in my opinion, is the future of education, right? I mean, this is the future of education. We're talking about how are we continuing to evolve, but specifically our little portion of it, which is, how do we do that best virtually? So, and just, the opportunity to have conversations with everybody in this community is just absolutely fantastic. Yeah,
no, I agree. And you're right. That was the ELearn Magazine initiative that we've focused on for the last several years. I believe that whether you use our platform or a different platform, or no platform at all, there is good content out there that will add value to the things you do. That's what we're trying to do, is to create more value in e-learning. And again, yes, there's a business there, but as you mentioned about your kids and just the economy and our workers, like one of the reasons that we're all so passionate about this is that it is so very core, education and making it better is so very core to where we live, right? I mean, whether it's my kids or your kids or just society as a whole, we want to have better, more educated citizens, people, children, all of those things. And so to me, that kind of sparks the passion that you're talking about. And it also, if you restrict yourself, you say, we're only going to talk to our customers, or we're only going to talk to that, then you're limiting the conversation, and you're not getting the best ideas. You're not, almost by definition, you're not, really tapping into the broad base of talent that's out there in the e-learning space. And I think that's what, the combination of eLearn and LMSPulse and the eLearning Success Summit has the potential to do. I mean, I think you've started to do that. And, what Open LMS brings to the table is some size, some scale, some additional capabilities, a group of clients that I think are desperate or are really seeking best practices and conversations with their colleagues around the world. And if we can, bring them into the conversations that we're having there, I think that's only going to benefit everybody. And so I'm delighted that we've been able to get to this point. Although I would say, as I said to you, I think the moment that all the documents were signed that this was going to happen, now the real work begins, right? We've had the conversations. Now we actually have to do what we said we wanted to do, which is go out and the funny part about that is, we're not going to get it right away, right? No. Like, and that's okay. We're going to try some stuff. We're already planning. We're already planning next year's eLearning Success Summit, which we hope will be bigger and better than ever. But we're going to try some new things, and some of those will work, and some of those won't. And then we'll try it again, and we'll wash, rinse, and repeat. And And I like that. And I would say that that's also a little bit about what's happened in e-learning over the last year, right? Especially as people have been forced online by the pandemic. There's been a lot of experimentation happening in e-learning. And I can't wait to tell more of those stories, right? Whether that's on LMSPulse or in case studies or whatever, or in your podcast, which you now have a big new group of clients to go talk to and invite to join you on your podcast. So looking forward to seeing some of that.
Speaking of which, actually, I think this example, I want to make the case with it. So quite literally earlier today, about 3 hours ago, I just interviewed an individual. His name's Anthony. Oh my gosh, it's oh geez, I'm sorry, Anthony. I totally just destroyed your name. But he's the editorial director at something called OpenStax, which is in Rice University.
Sure.
You're familiar with OpenStax?
Yeah, of course.
And our conversation was around how they're bringing into their editorial process a focus and a lens on diversity and inclusion, right? So they have this giant library of open source material and now they're editing it and also putting that in the process. But my point is that here's a university that has a program that puts materials out that more than 5 million people today are using, right? And these are at different universities. And so it's just to use that as an analogy where in this case right here, we're talking about, look, let's talk about the tech. Let's talk about the design principles. Let's talk about how do you create engagement. Let's talk about best practice to get educational outcomes in higher ed, in K through 12, in corporate, all of the different avenues that people are using e-learning. And there's no reason why we can't continue to have that conversation bigger, badder, better, going forward.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. One of the things I've been thinking a lot about is, Moodle Rooms, which became Open LMS, had its roots, especially during its time when it was part of Blackboard, very much in the higher education space. But we've always had companies that were corporate, and now with the acquisition that we made in Australia of eCreators, we've really expanded into the corporate world. And some people might say, well, man, does that mean you've lost your focus on higher ed? Well, we absolutely haven't. We haven't been losing clients in higher ed. We've actually been growing that business. But what we are starting to see is two things. And I'm thinking about how to leverage this, right? One is because we're seeing more blend in the features and functions that are being used between higher education and corporate. As some higher education moves towards competency-based and skill-based learning, the systems, Moodle is so flexible that you can do both, but the usage patterns aren't actually as different as they used to be. That's number one. And then the second thing that I'm seeing is actually, I love the idea of by making the same or flavors of the same platform really work for both corporate and higher ed, actually allowing more capacity for investment for both of those, right? If we only focused on higher education, our business would be half as small as it is today. And we would have half the capacity to innovate on top of the platform that we have today, right? And so the idea that kind of a rising tide lifts all boats is something that I think as we continue to grow and expand, we can really leverage. And I love that. I love the idea. I've always loved the idea of getting chief learning officers of some of our corporate clients in the room with CIOs of universities, because I think, and I know that everybody's protective of their own world, but I think if you let those people really talk, they'll find out they're facing some of the same challenges, and they may attack them in a different way, but there's a lot to learn from each other. So, we actually have budget to have a face-to-face users conference this year. I don't think it's going to happen now. In fact, I think we're preparing to announce it virtually, but I can't wait for the day when we can get all of our clients together and hopefully a bunch of the folks that would come to the eLearning Success Summit or read LMSPulse, to be able to get them together somewhere face-to-face so that we can actually start sharing some of these ideas and these lessons learned. You can do that virtually, of course, but man, it would actually be nice to see other humans, not on a screen again, and talk about things, wouldn't it? That would be great.
100%. I want to just pause real quick. I want to say thank you very much, and hello to Akeem Mustafa and Ann Mustin for stopping by. If you both if you have any questions or would like to put anything out there that for Phil and I about LMSPulse joining Open LMS, or if you'd like have any questions about Open LMS or LMSPulse in general, or ELearn Magazine or any of the other things, please put them in the comments there. We do see them, and we'd be happy to talk to them. Let me use that as an opportunity to segue, Phil. One of the things that many people will scratch their heads about is so where do we fit in the Open LMS LTG universe? especially with ELearn Magazine. Can you just take a few seconds, put your vision there?
Yeah, I mean, we've got pretty good ideas, but I'll say, usually when you say something like this, especially if it's definitive, you turn out being wrong. But we see these things as really complementary. I'll give a couple of examples. One, the eLearning Success Summit is a great example. That it is an absolutely wonderful event that there is no reason to stop doing. And honestly, the only things that we want to do, we want to encourage on the eLearning Success Summit is just to do it more and bigger and to get more people involved and engaged. It's because again, things that promote e-learning, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so we see that as much a service to the e-learning community as anything. And we're delighted by that. On the LMSPulse side, I mean, you guys have done an amazing job of, when Desire to Learn or Blackboard Hair, whatever, has a new release, you're talking about it. You're talking about users of that. You're interviewing people from LinkedIn Learning. And so there is no reason for that to stop. I mean, the way that I've been thinking about it, and I think this is true with the historical part of it, of how both the ELearn Magazine and LMSPulse came into creation, because I mean, LMSPulse actually used to be called Moodle News, and it was very much a news site. And I think you guys are still operate more like a news site, right? It's what's happening in the market, et cetera. Whereas ELearn Magazine tends to be more kind of longer form, best practices, a little bit more, I don't know the right way to say it, but I'm almost thinking of like a comparison between like the New York Times and the New Yorker as an example, right? Like one you might read every day.
Washington Post and the Atlantic, right? Like,
yeah, something like that. It's one you check out 3 times a day, and if it's the middle of an election season, you refresh it about 100 times a day if you're me. And one you might check it on a Saturday morning and see if there's a new article out there that you want to read. And I think that both of those can coexist really, really nicely. And so I don't know if that's the right analogy, but that's kind of the way I've been thinking about it. And that's kind of the direction that we're headed. But you know what? We're going to try things, and we're going to get some of them right, or we're going to get some of them wrong, and then we're going to keep moving forward. So I'm excited to try those things out and fail fast when we fail and move forward. I mean, the most important thing for me is less about the properties. It's really always about people. And we got to know Stephen, he fits so well with our culture, and Christian, we were working with them. It's just great to have more people that are like-minded on the team, and also the subscribers and the participants and the sponsors, right? I mean, the ed tech community is small enough that a lot of us are cut from the same cloth, and it's great to just make that team of like-minded individuals bigger and better. And so the rest of the stuff will take care of itself. As long as we continue to create new value, the direction that it goes, we'll go from there. So
awesome. I want to segue over to just talk for a few minutes about the eLearning Success Summit, as that's one of the major things that we're going to definitely keep moving on. I want to thank Lewis Carr for your comment there. We'll respond to that in a second. So great to see you here, Lewis. And also, Akeem, I saw that you had a question coming there. I'll respond to it. One of the great things, and I'm glad that you mentioned the summit. First of all, the eLearning Success Summit, the 2021 version, is available for anybody who wants to go there today. If you go to elearningsuccesssummit.com right now, you can join the summit. There is still live conversations. There's a giant Slack forum that we put together, Slack workspace that we put together. People are still interacting there. All 70 hours of content is still available. You can get it for free. This is a resource that we put out there. But I've loved watching the evolution of that, even though we've done it twice, right? When we first kind of put it out there, it was, oh boy, is anybody going to come? Right? We'll put together what we can. Is anybody going to come? And we just got really lucky that, I hate to say this, we got lucky that COVID happened, and e-learning was it was on everybody's mind. And,
Bam,
so
you guys were off to the races. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then, but this last year in April, when we launched the summit, it was really about, drilling deeper and saying, look, now we've all lived with online education for a while. How can we increase engagement? How can we actually build better content, be better instructors, build better technology? And we've learned a lot from the summit this year about how we present content, about the timing of sessions, about creating live conversations, whatnot. And so I'm, just that one project alone, if that was just the one thing that we were doing, we would have such, so much to look forward to going forward. But as you said, it's the podcast, it's the articles, it's the blog posts and whatnot. So super excited.
Yeah, but, so I've got to ask you on the summit. I mean, I have some idea of this because I know that even when we were in these conversations about you joining us, there would be times where you'd say, sorry, Phil, I can't chat. I'm recording sessions for the next 62 hours or some ridiculous thing like that. But I mean, I don't know that people fully understand how much work goes into pulling something like the eLearning Success Summit off. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't think I fully understand. And now that it's a part of Open LMS, I probably should figure that out. So, I mean, can you talk a little bit about how crazy that makes your life and how you kind of manage your way through that, especially these first couple times? Hopefully it gets easier every year, I hope, right?
Well, the person that you really should ask is my wife, because for 3 months, I basically disappear, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that startled me the most about, or was the biggest learning experience for me, was how far in advance you start the work, right?
Sure.
You think a summit comes on or a conference comes together, and okay, right, it's 3 or 4 days of people coming together and whatnot. That doesn't happen the week before, or even the months before. Like as Phil said, we're already planning 2022, and we're going to start. We'll be starting our outreach to sponsors and speakers and whatnot probably in the next 60 days. And really, what I've thankfully learned is, the technology and the tech stack and whatnot behind it. We kind of got that figured out, and so that wasn't such a heavy lift the second time. But it's the live, because the biggest feedback from the first version was people want to have community, these things. That's the reason why people go to conferences. It's great to learn something, but you can go to Coursera, you can go to lots of places and learn things. What we want the connection. Again, this is going to bring us back to that community conversation. And what we found is the summit becomes this giant connecting point. This year, we're almost up to 8,000 people have joined the summit this year, right? And it's a connecting point around the globe. We have Latin America, we've got Africa, we've got Australia, and the subcontinent and whatnot. Just everyone comes in and then puts their voice in there, and that's where someone from Indiana, like yourself, can really get a sense of, hey, what does it take to stand up an education system in the middle of the Congo? I mean, we actually had that conversation, right? And so the biggest learning for me has been, how do you facilitate that live experience, that shared connection? We did pretty good this year, and we have some great ideas about how to do better in the next one.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to hear it. I'm excited. I mean, and I promise I won't bother you too much in the lead up to the next year's summit. I'll leave you alone to do all your recording and stuff. That's fine. I'm glad that Lewis Carr is on it. Lewis, good to hear from you. I think we actually just texted the other day, so it's nice to see you joining us. I think what Lewis is saying is probably a better way of saying what I was trying to say earlier, which is part of the problem. And I'll say this even about the open source and the Moodle community. Traditionally, it tends to be you're either like a developer that's like writing code, or you were using Moodle, and the Venn diagram of those didn't actually overlap, right? And one of the things I think Moodle News did is kind of bridge that gap. And I think that's so valuable. We've got to be able to have open conversations that include technologists, that include leadership, that include teachers. Probably more student involvement would be a good thing as well, although it's sometimes complicated and hard to do. So I think that's the beauty of what you guys have built, and why I think it fits so nicely with what we're trying to do, because we are ed tech nerds, but we recognize that we need to talk to people that are not ed tech nerds and help them still be successful with education technology.
Yeah, and I want to thank Lewis for putting that out there, for even just mentioning the name Moodle News. That's that was the first name of LMSPulse. I also want to tip my hat right now to Joe Tebow, who was the founder of Moodle News, right? I mean, back in 2009, this is a person who had a passion for the Moodle project and open source, and started a passion project, and that's now become, as Lewis said, it really created it bridged the gap for a lot of people. And I'm really honored that we've had the ability to continue that legacy, and now we, as you say, we have a bigger pool to swim in. We have hopefully we can even punch even further above our weight. And
how many more sports analogies can you throw in there? Get a touchdown, hit a wicket. I don't know where are you going next? Yeah. So what should I read? If I'm a reader, if I'm watching your podcast, or we've got Anne here who went to the summit this year, but she needs to go back in. What what should we expect? I mean, what are you going to do next?
Yeah, so the reality is like in the immediate future, let's just call it the next 90 days, not a whole lot's going to change, right? The summit is still going to be the summit. The podcast is going to be the podcast, and we're going to still be putting out news on our very regular basis. What is going to happen is that we're going to see a facelift of the LMSPulse site. There's some exciting, user experience and just sort of visual graphic design navigation. We may also be categorizing some of our posts in changing that categorization a little bit differently so that it either aligns with or has a good handshake with the eLearn information as well. The podcast is going to have some of the best guests you've ever seen on them. I'm really excited, again, as you've mentioned, just even if you just look at the Learning Technologies Group, LTG, if you look at that group and the constellation of companies and experts and individuals there, I mean, the conversations are going to get deep real fast. I'm just thinking of, like, for instance, I'd love to have Amy Tessitore on the podcast to talk about, engagement, like what her talk at the summit this year was a huge sleeper hit that I honestly did not anticipate. But
when you say sleeper hit, you mean one that you didn't think was going to be big. It wasn't one that you slept through.
Well,
right?
she doesn't come across as a personality that's like, hey, like, listen to me. But man, she knows her stuff, and she
nailed it, didn't she?
So
she always does. And she just did a back to school webinar for some of our clients. Maybe last week or first part of this week, and we got such great feedback. So yeah, for sure.
She killed it. She absolutely kills it. And I just love that, it's just that blend of humility and confidence and just knowledge that just it comes together in this sauce that people love. And then so the podcast, and I actually kind of have a couple of things up my sleeve that you and I haven't even talked about around the podcast in terms of
Shakira. Is Shakira coming?
I saw Shakira this morning actually down here in Mexico. No, anyway. No, so just in terms of how we want to evolve the format to tell deeper stories, have higher production quality, and just sort of even make it a more meaty experience, so that when I as NPR says, I want to have some of those stay in the car experiences, right, where you're still listening to the car or whatever is driveway. I think they call it driveway things or whatever, right?
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great. Well, listen, you're now on things. I don't even know what's coming next on the eLearning podcast. Evidently not Shakira, which is disappointing. But but it sounds like there's some good stuff. I'm delighted. I mean, I will probably be as surprised as all of your listeners and readers will be about that. But I'm excited. Yeah, I don't. The nice thing is when things are generally working, you don't need to change a lot. I mean, the most important thing for me is just to, where things are working, to put more fuel behind it, right? That's the next step for us. I mean, I think the summit is off to a great success, but I know that when you and I were chatting not too long ago, you had 5 or 6 things that you're like, these things aren't going to work and we're not going to do them again. And then you've got 3 or 4 things you're like, man, we should double and triple down on that. So in all of this stuff, we're just constantly learning, and we'll figure it out. We'll make it bigger and better next time. And that's all we can do, right? I mean, it's not like we're going to, and e-learning is, think about the evolution of e-learning. It's 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, in my very early days, when I was a junior in high school, I was really good at math. I used to be really good at math. Now I can't even remember birthdays and stuff, but, and I had to actually take one of my courses, by mail from Indiana University, Kokomo. So it was a calculus 2 or calculus 3 course or something like that. And I would literally have to write on this paper, put it in an envelope, send it to the professor. And then it would take about 10 days to get, the graded paper back, by which time I had already submitted my next assignment, which if it was wrong was going to be wrong again. And so, that's been 27, 28 years ago now, but it's been, it's evolved. It's constantly evolving. And I tell the Open LMS team, you'll hear this soon enough, Stephen, is that, things don't change because somebody has some magical new thing that just changes everything overnight. Most of the time, it's just people making constant little improvements, right? At Open LMS, we're 160. Well, I guess with you guys now, we're probably like 162 people or something like that. And, it's going to be a different company in a year, but not because I've made a different decision, but because each of those 162 people have made small little decisions that make things better. And in the e-learning community, what I like about what we're doing is as people make improvements wherever they are in the world, as you said, in the jungle, in the Congo or whatever, if they make a little improvement, share it with others. If other people learn from that, then all that's doing is advancing the education of people around the world. And again, millions or thousands or whatever of little improvements add up really, really quick. And if we can be a conduit for that, that gets me really, really excited.
I love that what you're talking about, the constant evolution, the constant change is also, this is where the bridge is going to happen, right? And this is where the bridge continues to happen with LMS. Because Ann Mustin just put in the comments, she says, Akeem was talking about how Slack has been a little bit of a challenge for him on the summit. And Ann has sort of just, commiserated, saying, hey, Slack, it gets better, as you use it more because you get used to it, right? And that's one of the challenging parts of ed tech and whatnot, is that it does continue to evolve. But that's part of the conversation that we have. That's part of why we're here, is to bridge that gap. And also, if I, let me correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, but this is one of the things that OpenLMS does, right? We take a really complicated technology in Moodle, and we simplify it and we deliver it for organizations so they can concentrate on what they do. You can concentrate on delivering education. You can concentrate on delivering your business rather than worrying about whether or not your LMS is going to break, your LXP is going to break.
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, what you really want as an instructor is some version of either for the technology to get out of the way so that you can do things better, or for the technology to create some new opportunity that you wouldn't have had if the technology was not there, right? And so we try to do both of those things. I mean, a platform like Moodle and OpenLMS, I mean, it's an incredibly powerful platform. And what is it? I think at the end of Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, or something like that, right? Like, and I kind of feel that way. Like, at some level, you got to ease into some of these things. So that's what we do. It's about making things a little bit better every time. And I think we're doing a good job of that, and our customers seem to think we're doing a good job of that as well. So yeah, it's exciting. So let's talk about what should people do? What should people be expecting? Like, I mean, can you give us a teaser? Is there a new article coming out tomorrow or something that we should be refreshing for? What's next, and what should people expect?
For me, I'm going to leave the articles. We're really following some of the consolidation in the industry. We're really following some of the new ed tech that's coming out. That's happening really now. But really, the big conversation right now is back to school, as you know. Yeah. And so we're going to be putting out. We have a fairly large directory that we've built over the last year and a half here about online resources, as well as how you then bridge them into a real world classroom. So lots of hybrid learning stuff.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be focusing on that back to school kind of stuff for the next 6 or 7 weeks here, as that's rolling out in different parts of the world.
In this hemisphere, of course. Now, our friends in Australia and stuff are different schedule, but sure.
Yeah, if you're in Costa Rica, I mean, I guess you're getting into semester 2 right now, right? And so
we have so many clients around the world, and you just never. I mean, our support team, we do actually have we have a very dedicated over the next couple of months back to school effort, but because we serve so many different communities, really you could call every week except for the last week of the year, I think, is back to school somewhere, right? Like, so it's hard to keep track of all of it. You're just like, where's going back to school now? The Philippines just started school. You're like, oh, I didn't, I can't keep track of all of them. So as a global company, you learn about all the different school calendars, and this year is going to be weird, right? I mean, people are going back, but there's restrictions. Some people are not going back. Obviously, a lot more hybrid. I think it's great, the focus on back to school, because I think it's going to be a very unique back to school.
Well, that's the thing, and that's what I think part of our community service is going to be helping people to assuage fears, bridge those gaps, and then understand what it is. At the end of the day, one of the constant conversations I've had, both online, in this format, in dinner parties, whatnot, is the fear around what's going to happen to my kids, what's going to happen to my job, what's going to happen to my team. And what we're finding, here we are. I mean, we have almost 20 months of data now, right? When we're going into almost our sort of the second and a half school year, the kids are going to be fine, and the people are going to be fine. And what we need to do is we need to figure out how to bring those, bring all of those voices together to make sure that we support the people who are needing access, and to make it possible for them. And then for those people that are have that access and whatnot, it's like, how do you get the most out of the opportunity, et cetera, et cetera.
My only challenge to this, and this will be maybe the low light of this, but I do think it's important to say what is true, is that while we say the children are going to be fine, that is true for many children. But one thing that the pandemic did, and I know this because my wife works at a local, very diverse public school, when the pandemic hit and everything moved online, a bunch of students whose parents or families or situation was complicated just disappeared for a few months, right? They weren't able, they didn't have access. And so I do have, real worries from whether it's philanthropic or policy or other conversations about what do we do with those that didn't have the right opportunities during the pandemic. How do we make that right? I mean, and so, yes, I agree. There is so much data now about things that we can do better. But I do think some of and you mentioned it too, access, right? Like there is still a fundamental access problem. And it's often not what you think. It's not that they don't have a smartphone or a laptop or whatever. It's that, their parents are working 2 jobs or whatever those things are and can't be there to support them. And that's, and I think it's important that we understand that and we do our best to support the initiatives that are trying to correct for that. So, I think it's going to be a fun back to school. My kids just started. The triplets just started in kindergarten with Miss Jackie. Yesterday was their first day, so today's their second day. And so that was exciting, to put their backpacks on and we take the pictures out in front of the house. All the stuff that that parents do. And my son, who's 7, just started in second grade, and so then they're going back to school face to face, which is both exciting and scary at the same time, given the situation in the world. But I mean, it's so fun to watch the way that kids learn and absorb that. And I mean, I still love to learn, but just to see how excited they are when they figure something else out. I mean, all of us who are parents have had that experience, and it's fun to watch. And again, it's part of what inspires the passion and excitement. People don't work at Open LMS or in education for the money. It's as much about the passion as anything else. So nice. I think so. I think it's important to remember that. So
let me tie this conversation by inviting everyone. You just saw, if you've been here for any amount of time, the depth and the breadth of these conversations, right? So not only do we have fantastic opportunity with e-learning, we also have to make sure that opportunity is not missed by many people. So we got to provide that access. So, become a part of this conversation. We want to hear everyone's voice. You can reach out to us in any number of places. We're on Twitter at LMSPulse. We're on Twitter at Open LMS. We are at the eLearning Success Summit. We have a giant Slack workspace that you can join, again, for free. There's no cost involved for you. You can hit us up at on the blogs that we have, and then obviously come over to eLearn and check out some of those long form, really deep articles on the future of education, the future of learning. Phil, anywhere else that you want people to direct people to come and join the conversation?
No, I mean, the only other place I might point people to, and right now it's primarily our customers that are in there, but it is completely open to anyone, is community.openlms.net. That is actually a very interactive space. There's, I think we've got more than 1,100 people now that are in there asking questions. Some of them are technical, some of them, I mean, there's some, so, I mean, check it out. Try all of these different places and stay in the ones that you like. I mean, and get out of the ones you don't like. That's all fine. I mean, we're not going to be, we're not going to be offended. We want to meet people where they're at. So I think there's so many ways to connect with us. What I would say is, what I would really encourage all of you to do is, if you've got a great story of something that you have done, it doesn't have to be earth-shattering or a silver bullet like we talked about. It could just be a small thing that you learned in what you're trying to do with online learning. Let us help you tell that story, right? Whether it's an interview with Stephen on the podcast or a longer form article on eLearn, whatever that looks like. We want to tell that story, not only for you to be able to express that, but also for, I think on a combined basis now, we've got something like maybe approaching 30,000 readers across stuff. I may be off a little, rounding the wrong way there, but We'd love to be able to tell that story, because then other people could learn and then share back what they learned. And if we can create that kind of environment, then I think we'll call all of this thing a huge success.
Cool. Well, I will end by saying thank you very much for the opportunity. We're super excited. I know I speak for Christian, who's in the background here somewhere. We're excited about this opportunity to join Open LMS. Onward and upward. And here we go.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great week.
Thanks.
Bye, Stephen.